Welcome to the CRO Talks podcast, the companion podcast for the CRO Roundtable, a bite-sized chunk of content covering a recent roundtable discussion topic. So today we want to get into selling AI in CRO and how to bridge the maturity gap. This topic was brought up by Veronica Morozova. She was kind enough to record a video covering this topic, and here it is. Okay, so there's the splice. Yeah, so as Veronica mentioned, AI-powered tools are really transformative for the CRO landscape. Promising smarter insights, faster decisions, and increased efficiencies. But what happens if your client or your team isn't ready for those? So let's unpack some of the challenges of selling AI when the digital maturity just doesn't match the pitch, and how can you adapt your sales strategy and onboarding approach to meet clients or team members where they are.
Cool. There's a couple of things I want to point out from her question. So I think she mentioned like some teams thinking AI is really big and it's intimidating, and that vendors are running loads and loads. So other people, competition, are doing lots with AI, and there's a fear that it's going to replace their jobs. And then is kind of like, how do you lead a discovery, detailing about AI and how to embed AI. So so there's a few things there to pick up. I guess the first thing for me is kind of like, if you see Pep Laha's post on the what people are using AI for. He posted something on LinkedIn a while back. He did a mass survey with all of his user base and stuff. You see that?
I don't recall having seen. I'm sure I did, but I don't have it on hand in recent.
Yeah. So basically, what it was is kind of, the findings were quite interesting. Is basically most people or most companies are using AI for content generation.
Yep.
And not really for anything else. So not really for anything process driven or whatever. So
that's sort of like, so the immediate obvious output of AI, right? Is like, that's the first thing most people go to, and that's what it's been sold as, and commonly like understood to be like, oh, it'll write stuff for you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that his point in that post was, if you're worried about being left behind by AI, to go to Veronica's point, don't worry, you're not, because most companies are way behind, because all they're doing is using it for content generation. So I think that's the first
proliferation of low quality content, because it's being churned out by an automated system and not having the human touch applied. That's a different problem and a different topic, but
yeah. But basically, it's like to tackle that first thing of that fear that the competition, the vendors are running loads of AI and they're soon going to replace us and stuff like that. I think we overestimate how far and how fast companies are running with this. Certain companies are, but I think that, and that was the core thesis of his post.
Yeah, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors going on there, where people are saying they're using AI, but it's not applicable in like a data science or CRO or experimentation case.
Yeah, and then is it like going to that discovery in that case, and then how do you run a discovery about AI? And I think from my perspective is, we always, when we run a discovery and product discovery, you always want to start with the problem. Like, what is a problem statement? Like, what is it that you're trying to solve? So going in it with
same thing as like an individual experiment. You start with a problem, so it's the same kind of process.
Yeah, exactly. And too often, people are going in with a technical implementation challenge or a solution. In this case, AI. How do we implement AI? How do we put AI into our product? Which is kind of like the wrong way to look at it, and the right way to look at it
Solution
is,
based rather than problem based, right? They
yeah,
have the answer in search of a problem rather than having a problem in search of an answer.
yeah, exactly. And I think, like, if you're looking for, and if the discovery is more about how can we effectively use this new technology, then I think probably revisit the problems that you have, and then see if there is a way, if there is an AI fit, if there's and explore that problem. So then that way, if an AI solution fits into that as kind of like solving that problem, then that's something we could do. So to discuss and look at.
Is it a solution for the problems that you have rather than creating new problems to solve?
Yeah, you don't want to create new problems to solve. Yeah.
I mean, in an ideal world, but I mean, you know, like if an action didn't create any new problems, it wouldn't be work. Like that's, you know, that's just the nature of, like, there's always something to progress forward on. But
Yeah, yeah. I guess it's kind of like, if say we're looking at all of the current set of problems, and then if I don't think discovery might be the right place to do this, but kind of, going deep into those problems, and then seeing, reviewing what the current landscape is of those problems. If you had discoveries about them before, then what does this new technology add as a layer that you might have missed when you were doing the discovery for that problem in the past?
now, the way that we're specifically phrasing things is kind of within the context of internal teams or working on a problem. Do you think it's different if it's like a vendor client relationship? Like like the vendor is pitching to a prospect, and so they're trying to figure out, like, oh, we have some sort of AI solution that we're trying to sell. How do we gauge the maturity of the client to see, like, oh, are they ready for something like this? Is this something that they'll be utilized for? You're the whole construct around qualified leads. Like, you don't want to pitch to someone that's not going to be a right fit for your product, because it's going to be a waste of your time anyway.
Yeah, and one thing we discussed on that, when we were talking about this, is kind of like the was it gap selling, Keenan gap selling, and kind of like going. So and again, it's like when you're doing a vendor, even with a vendor client relationship, when you're going to them with a solution saying, hey, we've got this technology, you want to use this technology, rather it's better to try and understand the problems that they have, and then see whether or not you're an AI tool that you might be trying to sell is a good fit for solving that particular problem.
So asking better questions during the discovery process, right? So, figuring out how can you make the client's needs clear before you even start a demo or a pitch or something like that, and a couple of people brought up different approaches, like Craig, that sort of summed up around, like, just asking more direct, open-ended questions, so like Craig mentioned, his example was like, imagine this is the right product, what will it do for you? And then you had talked about using an OKR shortcut, like just directly asking, like, what's your OKR, or things like that, just being direct and straightforward, not trying to be abstract or slow in that process.
Yeah, and just trying to understand what the customer's goals are, what they're trying to achieve, and where their shortcomings are. There you've identified the problems, and then see whether or not there's a fit for an AI solution that you're maybe selling, or maybe trying to put a business case together to build.
Well, like what we were just saying, like straightforward, ask the client, like, what are the problems that you're trying to solve?
Yes. Yeah.
And then being like, okay, yes, we can help with that, or no, it's not applicable in this other case that you're asking about, and things like that.
And this is why, like, I really recommend the Gap Selling book, reading that book, because he makes a really, really good point in that even the client doesn't really know the problems that they're trying to.
That's also true. Yeah.
So basically the way that you can get to the problem is by like you said just before, like, ask really good questions, prod why multiple times, try to analyze and critically think everything that they're trying to do. How does this work? How are you doing this? How are you doing this? What if this happened? All of this kind of stuff. And then and why are you doing this? Why are you doing it that way? And then that way you kind of understand their issues a little bit more, and then problems just kind of bubble up to the surface, where you kind of go, well, what if? Well, it sounds like you're spending a lot of time doing this task, and they kind of go, yeah, we hired 10 developers to write, some to basically massage JSON code, for instance, to just format code. It's like, that's probably not a good use of their time. And they kind of go, yeah, you're probably right. So, so things like that just bubble to the surface after you kind of, prod and ask questions, pointed
ask
questions.
Good questions, but then also ask follow-up. Like you're keep digging until you find a match, or you're being respectful of time and you've hit the bottom of the hole and you can't dig any further, and that's when you know that it's not the right fit. Are there any other subtle clues that someone's not on board with AI?
I mean, I might be in the minority on this, but I think just the fact of you trying to sell AI is a wrong way to look at it, and anybody trying to sell AI is a wrong way to look at it. It's kind of like, well, it's more about, here's what our solution, here's what our tool can do for you. It doesn't matter what's powering it behind the scenes.
That's a very fair point. Like, yes, you've built the tool to solve the problem. The client doesn't, well, not that they don't care, but they're not concerned with the underlying infrastructure of your solution, because if they were, they probably may have had capacity to build it themselves. Like, as an example, I just recently had a similar type of discovery call where someone was asking about different A/B testing tools, and they were just getting started. They had nothing in place, and their initial directive was to build out a system internally with like feature flags and things like that. And they're a single developer. The company has never done any experimentation before. They're pretty small size. They were like under 50,000 monthly unique users and things like that. And I kept, I kept asking those questions to figure out, and I was like, you're not in a space where it would be appropriate for you to build your own system for that. Like, start with some sort of off-the-shelf solution to save you time, money, energy, etc. And that, like, they don't care how the tool was built because they don't have the capacity to build it. They just need something functional.
Yeah. They have a list of requirements. They have like problems, or even if they don't know what the problems is, there's the stuff that they need out of something. Then, and going back to what we were talking about before, they have a vision about where they want to be, and then there's like where they are now, and then there's the gap, and which is why, like, I don't want being to really bang on about this book, but which is why it's kind of like called gap selling, because you're trying to bridge that gap.
We could have made the episode much shorter, of just like after the video, just say, go read this book. There you go. That's all.
Yeah. Even though Even though it might
No,
take
not
a while
really.
to read that book.
No, and as with any other sales process, I mean, standard rules apply. Like
Yeah.
interpreting silence, hesitation, reading body language if you're in person, or what you can through a digital medium. Different things like that, and like you said, like it's not a matter of like, oh, our tool has AI in it. Like, here's what our tool does. Like, yeah.
But at the same time, like this is where I kind of to and fro with this, because I was at GRO Talks last night and I was speaking to some of the guys there, and I made this point, like, hey, because with selling Brasada, I try not to mention the AI aspect too much,
Right.
and they were kind of going, well,
This is
maybe
what it
you should.
does. It doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm saying, well, maybe you should, because if that is a selling point, like if people are kind of, if there's a perspective or something that comes to mind when you say AI, it'd be kind of like, oh yeah, so they're high tech, they're up and coming, they must have seed funders, they must be funded to the hilt, etc.
That's a little smoke and mirrors there.
Yeah, but still, there's like a perception that comes with, okay, so these guys are doing AI, so they're really thinking forward thinking, futuristic, or maybe whatever. But is that some reason? Is there a reason to kind of mention AI? The fact that it is kind of almost a buzzword, and the fact that it is so many people are trying to.
It's more of a brand play than a technology feasibility thing, though. Like that's in this current time frame, saying that you're using AI shows you as forward thinking versus, I mean, it would be hyperbolic here, whereas you're like, our software uses Morse code or something, like some sort of antiquated, obviously silly, defunct system or something like that. Like we leverage the power of fax machines. Like, yeah, that's ridiculous, right? So there's going to be like a time frame context for stuff like that. Like, yeah, you can jump on trends to help get a boost, but that's not necessarily AI specific. Think about whatever, like 10 years ago, everything was, everybody was coming up with all their brands with lowercase I at the beginning of it because iTunes and things like that.
But that's a really good point, because it is kind of like, and that always is part of I mean, I don't do sales, but I imagine that is part of a sales pitch in terms of like jumping onto current trends and using current trends and buzzwords,
leveraging cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah. Might be like I said, might be completely wrong. I'm used to doing discoveries, but not necessarily selling. But yes.
Is there anything that you would do? So say someone, you finished with discovery and now you're at the point like, okay, there is a right fit here now. Any adjustments to like your demo strategy of like, what should you show and what shouldn't you show? And again, that's going to be a heavily contextual question, but
actually, like, I don't mean to sort of bang on about my app, but something that I have done.
Practical examples, real world.
Practical examples of like demos that I've done, and having sat through loads of demos. I mean, there's one just before I get to it. There's one particularly bad sort of use case of a demo where we thought we were going to get a demo from this vendor, and then so we all signed up, we all logged in, and then it was just a discovery for them to understand our problem, and then they kind of went, okay, so we're going to go away and give fashion our demo, and then we'll set in another meeting for the demo. And it's like, oh geez, it's like now I have to sit through another thing. I thought this was the demo. So one thing that I've have started to do for my demos is to just kind of like get a sense beforehand in terms of send an email and see if it can learn as much as possible through some pointed questions, something that we mentioned earlier, like OKRs or goals and stuff like that. Those are really easy questions to ask beforehand. And then when it comes to the demo, absolutely yes. Tailor the demo, not necessarily completely change the demo, but you'd emphasize certain things that are relevant to them and maybe highlight them, maybe push back some of the stuff that is, and just kind of breeze over those a little bit, but kind of really emphasize and push forward some of the things that are relevant to them.
You're gonna bore someone if you try to show them everything that the tool does. Also, you're not gonna have enough time to do that anyway. So leverage the information that you figured out from discovery and tailor that demo. Start with your basic core functionality to make sure. But then if there's a particular feature that would stand out and answer their questions, make sure focus on that, add on, show bits and pieces as necessary.
Yeah. And just kind of join the dots, so to speak. Basically you kind of go, well, here's the feature, here's how this feature connects to the problem that we've identified through talking to you, and here's how this could help, and just kind of draw a picture for them to kind of just illustrate how great it could be, this feature could be in solving their issues, what it would feel like to use that and have that issue resolved for them. Selling the dream. You're trying to sell the dream.
There you go.
Yeah.
So now with that, there's also an issue of trust and credibility there. We sort of hinted at it earlier. Most companies are under leveraging AI. A lot of them, they're using it for content generation, but not deeper work. And so if you're selling something with AI components and that comes up, how can you avoid being seen as just another AI hype merchant where it's like, yeah, we have AI. I mean, we do that. There's all talk and no substance.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's kind of, it's just kind of tackling some of the negative perceptions of AI. AI generates bland stuff. It's generic. It's really boring. AI gets stuff wrong. It hallucinates. It's kind of like you don't. It's almost like a black box. And what you're trying to do again is to try and steer it away from it being about AI and just kind of saying, well, here's why we're using AI here. We're using AI here because it allows us to do this at scale. So instead of doing,
you're using it as a force multiplier to process mountains of information faster rather than for using it to generate new information.
Or other problems like that, or basically saying, well, before it used to be a lot of work, manual labor to do this, to get this done, and that used to take weeks. Now we can do it in a day or 2 days, or you can do it a day with this tool, or it can save, not necessarily if you're speaking to a product owner or whatever, but you can say how much time your user researcher is spending on X task. This can, by leveraging this, we can reduce the effort and leveraging the AI aspect of this thing, this tool, this feature. Then your user researcher spends less time on the menial tasks and more time on higher value tasks. So, and kind of position it in that way in terms of what is the role of AI in this, and then going back to your point about getting their confidence with the sense of authority, that kind of bridges that sense of authority. They get a clearer picture about, how it's being used, how it's not being used.
Yeah, like practical example, and to give you a bit of a plug, sort of here, like using some sort of software to read through 1,000 review sources to generate summarized information and insight from that. Having a person do that might take 2 or 3 weeks for them to have to read through all of those, because that's probably not the only job that they have to do. So they're going to have to do it in chunks. Also, it probably gets pretty tedious at a point. So it's not like they can spend 8 hours a day just reading and scoring reviews, right? No,
Yeah.
let's feed that through an AI powered system to process all of that information for me and do all of the menial labor of summarization and sorting and pulling out highlights. And then your your researcher can take those results and work with them and then dig deeper as needed, saving them weeks worth of drudgery effort. They can act as more of like an editor, proofreader, administrator, rather than a data entry person.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically like, and also the fact that you're the other problem with humans doing certain tasks is that they're subject to biases. So, for instance, outside pressures from above to say, we must deliver this. We need to do this with AI. We need to push this thing with AI. Whereas if you were looking at it from an objective perspective, which if an AI tool is doing its job properly, it should hopefully be.
That's a whole other can of worms.
That's a whole other can of worms.
AI bias, yeah.
Yeah, but if it's doing its job properly, if it's been done in a correct way, then it should be dynamically categorizing, for instance, instead of categorizing based on labels that in the business. So I'm in a business with I don't know parks, Disney parks or whatever, and I have a set of problems that I've been told are issues, and now those issues are swimming around in my head. So now any sort of labeling, categorization is based on those terms, whereas the actual problem could be something else. So if I go into the data sets and go through tagging them with the tags and labels that I've got in my head, or I've been told are the issues from wherever source, then that's a bias that I'm applying to the data set. Whereas if the data set were to kind of like slowly evolve a picture of taxonomies and categorization labels and stuff like that, then that's something that's happening dynamically from the data set itself without any sort of bias creeping in from the user.
Yeah, like a lot of companies previously would hire like an outside consultant to get that outside perspective and to avoid bias. And now you can use AI for that instead, which that's a bad message coming from me as being an independent consultant. But hey, what are you going to do?
Yeah. I mean, you can say you're using AI for that.
Yeah, right. I always jokingly say that I'm trying to talk myself out of a job with the type of work that I do, right?
Yeah.
Because a well-optimized site doesn't need much additional optimization work to it. In theory, but
in theory, yeah. You don't want to go too fast optimizing stuff. You want to go.
Well, hey, no. All right, awesome. Any other closing thoughts on the topic for today?
No, I think we covered things from Veronica's perspective. But yeah, it was a really good discussion.
Thanks to her again for bringing up the topic. It was a nice, meaty conversation that we've had.
Yeah. It was a really good conversation, and the fact that she recorded that video for us, that was really good.
And so in the future, if you'd like to join in with us on any of these interesting conversations and perhaps have one of your topics covered on one of these episodes, you can always join me and Iqbal every Friday at the CRO Roundtable. And you can sign up for that either on LinkedIn or at our website, crotalks.com. If you're shy or you don't like speaking, you can always hit us up on social media as well. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.